Now, quest around a bit. Ask yourself this. For what reason would a person be considered hopelessly insane? What sort of claims must a person simply not make? Well, there is one, and that is if anybody claims that he is God. That simply isn't done. But you see, the trouble about deep secrets is they can't be repressed indefinitely. There are certain processes, some of which are what you might call spiritual exercises. Others are simply chemicals. Others are just horse sense, whereby one comes to see very clearly indeed that black goes with white and self goes with other. And as this becomes clear to you, it's rather shaking.
The monopoly the U.S. government has on the subject matter is not respected by the non-human intelligent spirits. The skies are not classified and your conscience cannot be redacted. Ultimately, why I feel safe and why I feel optimistic about the future is I know the NHI is guiding us that way.
And that is the secret. There really is no other secret than that. But it is thoroughly repressed.
Welcome back to the Night Shift, your safe space for talking about UFOs, UAPs, NHI, Psionics, Disclosure, and everything else. It's so good to be back with you. It's been a week. What do you think about that music video? Unbelievable, right? Unbelievable. That is all Xander. That's the music, the edit, everything. It gets me in the feels every time I watch it. It's great to be back with you all. Thank you all for being here. It's going to be a very, very big show today. This is a very exciting show. In fact, it wasn't originally intended to be this exciting. So we, as the week has gone on, it's kind of built up. And you're in for a treat. We've got Georg Boch from the Ubiquity University Psionic Summit. He's going to be talking to us about the role of psionics in the disclosure discussion, in ufology in general, the cultural significance of this moment. If you've been paying attention at all over the last few months, you've noticed that the conversation has shifted dramatically in this space toward this whole concept of psionics, telepathy, mind control, the mental space, and the way that all of this technology comes together and works with consciousness. So we're going to be talking about the Psionic Summit, what that's about. The speaker guest list is amazing. It's literally the all-star guest list of people that you would want to hear from in one place at one time. It's awesome. Very excited about that. And in the second half of the show, friend of the show and journalist, filmmaker, documentarian, director, John Stewart is going to be joining us to, well, geez, I don't even know what to say. He put out a press release. He's going to make an enormous announcement, something that he promises is going to rock your world. So we're very excited to talk to John, find out exactly what he's got in store for us. It's going to be big. I have it on good authority. So with that, Xander, how are you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I've got a little bit of a confession. Oh, also, sorry, the video may have been a bit skippy at the start. That's nothing to do with me, but we'll just get it uploaded on YouTube separately and anybody can rewatch it if they want. Yeah, I've got a bit of a confession. So, you know how I have a buzzy microphone? And you gracefully bought me 12 new XLR cables last week as some sort of joke, which my daughter has loved. She's been playing with the cables the entire time. I actually bought an XLR cable the day before they arrived.
I know. I know.
And on top of that, I don't even think it's fixed the problem. So
It was
there we go. I've
something
got
else.
13 XLR cables and one broken microphone. But anyway, other than that, I'm good.
You can always use another one. And you can daisy chain them together. So it's all, it's all good. Great edit. Great work on that music video. It was outstanding. Really,
Thank you
really
very
was.
much. Yeah, Xander's first video. So
It was
Yeah,
great.
Xander-
Was it Alan Watts at the beginning? Or who was
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was that from? The Alan Watts quote, Xander? Do you remember?
he's just got like loads of compilations of quotes on YouTube. So I picked
Literally thousands of hours.
Yeah, I've wanted to use that one for a while, and it felt very apt for the topic of the video, at least.
Well, let's get right into it. We've got a lot to cover today, and there's so much to talk about. I want to welcome our first guest, Georg Boch from Ubiquity University. He is the co-host and one of the organizers of the Psionic Summit. Georg, welcome to the Night Shift. It's so great to talk to you. Thank you for carving out some time for us.
Thank you for the invitation. It's great to speak to you guys. You have a wonderful podcast going, and I really love this intro video. Really good stuff.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with you, and especially timely because the conversation in ufology has dramatically shifted, I would say, in a very, very short period of time, from the nuts and bolts disclosure of walking into a storage facility and looking at all the hardware to almost like a citizen-led movement around this whole concept of psionics. And you are one of the organizers of the Psionic Summit, which, as far as I'm aware, is the first of its kind to do anything like what you're trying to do. Can you please tell our audience today a little bit about yourself? What is Ubiquity University doing with the Psionic Summit? Why is this so important, and why is this such an interesting shift in the conversation?
Absolutely. So Ubiquity University is an online university that is focused on, you could say, personal development and integral meta theory, like integral theory by Ken Wilber. We exist since over 10 years, and people can take different studies that have to do with wisdom studies and transpersonal psychology. And what happened in 2023 is that through the connection of our president, Jim Garrison, and his friendship with Danny Sheehan, we decided it would be a good idea to start ET studies to ready the academia to take this subject more serious and to build kind of a mental muscle, but also the transpersonal abilities that we need to cultivate in order to be part of this cosmic moment for humanity. And that's kind of what brought us to organizing the Psionic Summit. We are collaborating with Bertie Jaworski, the remote viewer, who was on your show, I believe.
Yeah, Bertie's great.
Yeah, and so we're working very closely with her. Ever since last year, we were planning that to create, you could say, a certificate in remote viewing, in her remote viewing technique, transdimensional mapping. And then we were very, very happy and pleased to see that Jake Barber came forward. And what before was kind of, you could say, a separate field, remote viewing, has become center stage of the disclosure conversation.
I just want to read through this list, the speaker list here, and maybe if Xander, you've got the website available, you could pull that up. This is crazy. Listen to this, people. This is who's going to be here: Jake Barber, Ross Coulthard, Bertie Jaworski, Chris Bledsoe, Richard Dolan, Jim Garrison, Dr. Sean Esbjorn, am I saying that right? Hargens,
Yeah.
Sarah Gam, Dr. Pippa Malmgren, Bob Grenier, Dr. David Clements, and George, who we're talking to today. Unbelievable lineup. For people who aren't familiar with psionics, it's kind of a new term for a lot of people. For some people who have been in this space for a while, it may be familiar. Can you tell people what is psionics? Set this up for us. Set the table a little bit. What is it? What does that word mean? And why is it so important to ufology?
I'd love to, thank you. So, well, this is kind of the first ideas on the territory. Can you guys see my screen? I'm trying to share.
Let's see. I see nothing.
Okay, let's try again. I think there we go. Supposedly I'm sharing. There it is. Okay.
There we go.
Great. So, you know, we believe that psionics is really at the intersection of several conversations that have before been separated. And one big element of it is definitely this legacy, not like a legacy project, but the legacy of the human potential movement, you know, like the hippies, the age of Aquarius, positive psychology, integral theory, which is this, you could say, cultural elite project in the US and worldwide of postmodern thinkers who are about the integration of Western, Eastern, indigenous wisdom, spiritual practice. And one of the big proponents of that is Ken Wilber, a famous philosopher, and he coined the idea of growing up, showing up, cleaning up, and waking up. And when we listen to the psionic acids, they always talk about clearing their space, their emotions, so they can access these other realms, right? It is a serious practice that needs to be cultivated. And there are ideas that in the human potential movement, we have several ways of knowing, right? There is kind of the eye of the flesh, the eye of the spirit, the eye of the mind, and there is heart intelligence. And so it invites us to show up with everything that makes us human in this disclosure conversation, where before that wasn't really on the table so much. And so there's this intersection, of course, then with the disclosure movement, ufology subculture, right? And I think one of the big quotes I really love that has been, I believe, kind of making It's a crucial formative quote by Carnell that was done at the SALT conference in 2023, I believe, where it says non-human intelligence exists, non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity, this interaction is not new, it's been ongoing, and there are unelected people in the government that are aware of that. There's zero doubt, right? And we're living in this zero doubt moment. But it's still kind of abstract. Like there's zero abstract doubt if you really take care, if you really do your homework and look at the evidence is overwhelming. There's zero doubt, but it's still, unless you are an experiencer, it's kind of abstract. And then the third element, I believe, is this parapsychology, psy-technology undercurrent that's been kind of not talked too much about, but now we realize that the remote viewing world and the ufology world is actually the same program. It's the same secret, and we as human beings are kind of the exotic technology, the same exotic technology with possibly the same abilities as what we call UFO technology. And so we are the secret in a weird way. And our own potential can't be redacted. And that's Jake Barber's message.
In that statement you just made, where is that coming from? This idea that we may be the technology, or we may be a key or a part of it.
Right. So this comes from, of course, the idea when you look at what is discussed in this UFO physics world, right, of abilities that this advanced technology allows us to do. And if we look at what has been reported to be human ability throughout, you'd say, thousands of years of wisdom traditions, Buddhism, the Siddhas in India, people like Uri Geller, and the overwhelming evidence of psi, then we can see that basically maybe the brain is something like a quantum biotech computer, and we have a lot of exotic abilities that aren't really discussed. And the way we see the world as kind of Western people, as this point of view machine that is very much isolated from the universe at large, in a dead universe, that's really just a blip on the radar in the history of humanity. If you look at the indigenous cultures, if you look how they see the world, if you even look in people in Thailand who are Buddhists, see the world full of entities who are interacting and they can communicate with. I mean, that's just, most of human culture has been about that, participating in a greater reality with other entities. And we're coming back to that, but we're coming back to that with brainwave technology, with understanding of quantum communication, and that's what's going on.
That's a really fascinating way to put this, because you mentioned that the remote viewing world and the UFO world are the same world, more or less. And it's so interesting because you wouldn't have thought that maybe 20 years ago unless you were really steeped in this topic. And now it's sort of just common sense that those two things are connected. And I think when people on-ramp into ufology who may not have been studying it for a long time, that's one of the things you kind of figure out early on now, is that there's a connection between all of this. And
it
there
took
was
me quite a while to figure it out. Like, to me, it's actually news.
It was actually news for you.
Yeah. I mean, it's like it's a great interview with by Ross Coulthard with Uri Geller, where he talks about how Werner von Braun shows him basically the biologics in some Nevada test site.
That's right. They were in like glass tubes, weren't they?
Something like this. And then, of course, I think the most prominent person that connects these two fields is Hal Puthoff.
I was going to mention Hal. I just got so Hal Puthoff, for those people who don't know, and Russell Targ, along with Ingo Swann, developed the original remote viewing program at Stanford Research Institute back in, what was this, 1975 or 76, I think it was, until 1985. It ran for almost 10 years, officially. The government spent tens of millions of dollars on this program. They developed these remote viewing protocols that Ingo is kind of the father of remote viewing, or the grandfather of remote viewing, And I just got, I have Ingo's book, Everybody's Guide to Natural Telepathy, and I got Russell Targ's book here, The Reality of ESP. And Ingo's book is dedicated to Hal Puthoff. And it's just amazing the stuff that he claims in that book, the claims that he makes. He goes on to expand on the ufology world in a way that's just kind of mind-blowing. Can you talk to us about the Psionic Summit? What is the goal of the summit? How are you positioning this group and Ubiquity University as within the larger conversation of ufology and disclosure?
Yeah. So the basic idea is that with the summits we've been making, we also did one back in November when there was a drone situation, is that we believe there is a lot of unnecessary dissent in this disclosure community. We're really focusing on the stuff we disagree on and don't really talk about what we agree on. And there needs to be more summits, like marketplaces of ideas where people talk to each other at eye level, take each other serious, even though they have different worldviews, and talk about what they know and what they agree on in what is the biggest story on the planet right now, if you are aware of it. And that's kind of the idea. And the larger offering of Ubiquity University with Bertie Jaworski and Transcendental Mapping is that we are training people to become remote viewers with the purpose of ET contact. As crazy as it sounds, that's what we're doing.
Is this something that's being studied intentionally as it's being done? In other words, like, is there a process to collect data on people as they're doing these remote viewing processes and experiments so that we can start to determine, like, what are the best practices, what are the things that work, and make this more effective for everyone? It just seems to me like, and we were talking before the show a little bit about this idea that disclosure, 2 years ago, the idea of disclosure was like the government will come clean. Someone will walk out in a suit in a press conference and they'll just start telling us stuff. And that idea is kind of gone now. And we're in this new world, it seems, of citizen disclosure. Like, we're going to just do it ourselves and make contact in some way that can't be ignored and can't be classified. How do we prepare people? How do you build out the protocols for how to do this in a way that's repeatable, testable, and gives us good data to work with?
Yeah. I think what's really new is the ubiquitous usage of EEG devices like Muse, but also devices who can stimulate brainwaves. And so what Birdie is doing, and I'm sure she talked about it on your podcast before, is that she helps people like do intensives, virtual intensives. We had a 5-day, 8 hours a day virtual intensive, where people really went into the ins and outs of starting to develop their remote viewing capabilities. And then we're offering additional classes where it's about charting brainwaves and understanding what type of brainwaves are correlated to correct remote viewing sessions, like positive answers. And there are certain ways you can have kind of learning neurofeedback learning loops that help you then get into the right brainwaves that are scientifically proven to get you higher positives in remote viewing. But this is, of course, only the technical part of the conversation. There's also the spiritual part, right? But we have Chris Bledsoe and other folks who make clear that this is a big field and there's a lot to talk about. And that's why in this chart I had on before, I think it's still there is this idea of, are we connecting to a kind of metaphysical superstructure here, unified field, Akashic records? There are many terms to describe this consciousness that allows us to remote view in the first place. The question is like, how crazy, how wonderful is this universe that this is possible? Or how wrong is the narrative that we have adapted in order for us to think that this is crazy?
I think you talked about the reemergence of ancient wisdom, indigenous wisdom into our culture, and then this fusion between that knowledge and understanding and our own technology and research techniques. I wonder, is this something that is it do we know what we're doing? If we're teaching people, we don't know what we don't know what we don't know, right? We don't know. The unknown unknowns are unlimited, right? There are already people who make very valid arguments against the idea that anybody should be unilaterally in contact with any of these groups because we just don't know what we're dealing with, and certainly people we don't know in the government who may or may not be making agreements with these groups or whatever they have going on. Is it dangerous to teach people to make contact with something that we don't really understand on a large scale? And do we have any idea of, as we go forward and learn more, how to kind of, I don't know, organize that knowledge and information and make it accessible to people so that as we become familiar with this phenomenon in a more intimate way, one-on-one, individually, people know what to expect? Does that make sense? I know it's a lot.
Absolutely. I think that's a great point. And there is this aspect of being an explorer where you don't really know where you're going. There's this term psychonaut, right?
Yeah.
But I think what's a big distinction here is that this is not about taking DMT or LSD or, stuff that would artificially put you into position to perceive something you're not ready for. This is about training, cultivation of certain abilities that we have. And it is about personal growth. It is about outgrowing your sense of reality. So it's also a type of spiritual practice, but it is done in the context of this cosmic moment where we know that many people have these type of interactions with NHI, right? If that makes any sense. There's a nice little meme here we could share if you put back my screen, which I found pretty funny. I found it on X. That speaks exactly to that question, right? Like there are these guys talking about contact modalities, DMT, highs, like it's human initiated, close encounters, CE5, the hitchhiker effect, where these orbs and entities kind of latch onto you, and then there are these abductees and contactees that say, "You guys are asking for it. I have it, and I didn't want it in my life, and it improved my life." Right? Like, what are you guys talking about?
Well, that's it. I mean, I think there are some valid concerns. It's out there. It's a conversation that many people are having. Are we dealing with something that's benign? Is it malevolent? Is it benevolent? Who actually knows? How many different types of intelligence are there? Why? What are their motivations? What is their disposition? What are they trying? What are their goals? And then to complicate things, we find out there's multiple different government programs happening from different countries around the world, all interacting with these. But we just don't know what we're dealing with. But I think it sounds like what you're saying is humans have these capabilities. We have this talent. It's part of just our humanity. It's part of our makeup. We should learn to handle it. We should learn to understand how all this works, and we should become adept at navigating this space. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And we're also holding the summit on Sunday to have exactly this conversation. Like, what is the contact ethics that we should be having here? Right? What is how we make sure that the human sovereignty is preserved in this? And how do you determine or discern what is an entity that you should be having contact with, and how do you know that this is not a good idea? Right? These are important questions that we need to also agree on or find a common ground as a community. And I just believe it's all there. It's on the spectrum of good and evil and in between, and agendas we just don't understand. But the question is, if we don't do this, will there ever be some type of disclosure if we don't engage these abilities that we have? It just seems like something that we need to do if we're serious about bringing the subject forward.
So it's about taking responsibility for our role in this and stepping up, understanding our abilities and trying to master those, in a sense.
Yes, I believe so. Yeah, I mean, there are certain ways we could talk about it. We have people on the podcast on Sunday who say that they have kind of reached a stage of telepathic contact with entities. I don't know if you can see my screen here, right? And so there are different ways of thinking about what stages are real here. There is this idea that there is like, weekend highs or state experiences. You know, where you have a peak group experience and you see some orbs or something in C5. And then there seems to be this ability that a trait exists in highly trained psionic assets where there is a repeatable kind of operationalized ET communication for whatever purpose. And then what's really new, emerging, and people like Birdie or Dr. David Clemens are representing that, or even Chris Bledsoe, is prolonged telepathic relationship building, where you have relationships to these entities. And this is breaking our paradigm of what disclosure was supposed to be about. I have a little slide about that where you can just briefly look at it, because I think it's worth talking about.
Please.
Because it seems like this psionic conversation kind of went a bit too fast. Like many people
really
in
went
the
quick,
community kind of felt a bit, you could say, we're not ready for it. And so if we look at if we track the frontiers of these disclosure narratives, we have, the lowest common denominator that's almost like mainstream is down here, like the mystery drones, and there may be US military or foreign adversaries, who knows. Then the next level is kind of, oh yes, they're UAPs, maybe they have anti-gravity technology, definitely they have these observables, they move too quick to be normal propulsion we are aware of. So like the Nimitz encounters, the Tic Tac encounters, this New York Times video. And then the next step that was kind of brought in by Grush is this idea that yes, NHA craft with biologics are in possession of the government since Roswell, no doubt, which we knew for a long time. And the next step is then when we say, yes, actually we build these UFOs and we fly them around. There was this great quote in Elizondo's testimony in November where he was kind of grilled by Nancy Mace, and then he said Nancy wanted to know, like, are these ours or theirs, like the NHI? And he said it may be both. Yeah. Then he went into all kind of stuff, but it's kind of, we just got around accepting that we have these anti-gravity vehicles.
And to be fair to Dr. Greer, because sometimes Greer gets a little heat, he's been saying this for like 25 years. Yeah.
He's been saying it, and he also was in contact with Jake Barber. Jake Barber mentioned this in the Ross Coulthard interview. And so there's a backstory there. And then what Jake Barber is bringing forward is like saying a new paradigm. It's really a paradigm shift. Like before we could hold on to the idea that we're talking nuts and bolts and this is it. But with this story, we realize that both the government and the ETs are playing a different game.
I want to push back a little bit on this idea, because I think I agree with you that there's a different idea playing out here, but I think the way the community is reacting is based on this sense of like, wait a second, we're not going to get to see the thing now. Like we were all amped up with the Disclosure Act,
right? Yeah.
And they were going to walk into the Northrop Grumman building and they were going to go right up to the thing and show us the UFO. And now it's like, well, wait, I get to have a psychic friend, but I never, it's a light in the sky that I may never see or interact with. It just seems like a big reversal, and the expectations are very jumbled.
Frustration. I mean, I think also the reason we should be doing this to engage in psionics is out of spite, because I really don't believe that this new administration is going to move substantially on revealing anything relevant. If you just look at what they said about the drones, all FAA approved. Okay, so whatever happens in the world of ufology in terms of new sightings, new UFO flaps, it's all going to end up being called, our military tests and CGI or AI video. And what happened in November was the perfect example. If what happened in November doesn't move the needle, then nothing will, basically, unless we have Independence Day.
You make an excellent point. I think at this point, the threshold for what constitutes believability is just much higher than it was before. People really do want to see something spectacular now. It's going to have to be. Well, let me ask you, what does it need to be? What would it need to be, in your view, to really move the needle on this?
It's crazy. The remote viewers said that this year they're going to be big flying UFOs over the oceans and people can drive to them. That's what been being promised. But
Chris Bledsoe was saying that 2026 there's going to be an enormous event that no one will be able to ignore.
Says something along the lines as well. But do we really believe it?
Well, I think that's at the heart of it is how do we take this moment, right, where there's this people I think are willing to go there. I think people are like, okay, this sounds even cooler now. It was just UFOs before, but now it's UFOs and telepathy. That's cool. But without some kind of a system in place to actually measure and measure progress towards some kind of a outcome, it's just a lot more meditation talk and lights in the sky that may or may not be whatever. And I think that's where people are getting stuck. Certainly I am, and a number of people in our audience, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot for this. I'm just curious what your thoughts are. It feels like we've been kind of stuck in this, we're just sort of in the middle. We're in between, and people are ready for some kind of climax for this thing to take place. And I just wonder, is that something you think is possible? Can we, if enough people learn how to remote view or enough people learn how to make contact, is there an organized plan in place, or could there be, to do this intentionally with a cohesive message behind it to actually get
just
somewhere?
Imagine that people would start honing in UAPs at the next Burning Man.
Oh God, can you imagine?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we're talking about here. This is the potential cultural shift of Silicon Valley money combined with these exotic technologies that are seeping in to measure UAP activity, to entrain brainwaves, AI brain interfaces. There was a great video released by Meta today that's basically in place, and it's a frontier of technology that we can play with without getting killed. That's what we get when we play around with, anti-gravity or zero-point energy. That's very dangerous stuff. But here, the private sector can really get in there and do crazy stuff and move the needle. And that's what they want to do. And that's what Jake Barber wants to do with the Skywatcher thing. And let's see if it works. But I think it's pretty probable that they will get pretty good footage.
Is Silicon Valley money really what we want? Is that the way? Is our choice between the government, military, industrial complex or Silicon Valley? Because that almost sounds like worse in a way.
Might not be what you want, but it's what you gonna get.
Fair enough. And hey, look, I'm on the progress train, so let's just go. But I'm just, God, it doesn't sound like. Is there a third option?
Yeah, I wish there was. Yeah, I think there should be a third option. I just think that, our generation, to me, the biggest argument here is all the technology that we don't get to experience, all this stuff that's black shelved. I don't know if you watch Ashton Forbes' podcast.
Yes.
He does a pretty good job connecting the dots. Bob Greenier does a pretty good job, who will be there on Sunday. Greer has been talking about it since forever.
Richard
And-
Dolan has some great ideas, and he's talked even about the breakaway civilization hypothesis. And there's some really out there, but very reasonable, I think, ideas of what could be accomplished with some of this technology. Do you think we'll actually get there? You think we're going to see any of this stuff, or is this just is this what happens when billionaires just have too much money? They're just like, you know what? Let's go for it. Let's make contact. How can we find a way to patent a UFO?
Yeah, I believe the contact has already been made.
Yeah.
There's good reason to believe that there is a certain parallel reality on this planet where the deep state is working with these ETs, and they walk around in these bases, right? But this is not a reality we can readily access. It's very abstract. It doesn't really have to do anything with us. It might just be happening on a different planet. So the question is, if we're really serious about this, the only thing we can do is to understand that we're co-creating our reality and become aware of how our consciousness interacts with life in general in the field. And it sounds a bit woo-woo, but I think the term woo-woo is also a psyop.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Can you go into that in a little more detail?
Well, it ties back, if you look at the big history of humanity, our actual experience of reality, it's psychophysical. Many cultures believe that it's your experience. There are synchronicities. There are ways things work out in mysterious ways. There is purpose that you experience. There's spiritual connection. It's more difficult to deny that. And we're in the West have been kind of entrained to dismiss it. But it's coming back. And there was a great argument that maybe medieval people would have an easier time understanding the UFO phenomenon than we do.
Because it was part of their world.
Yes, the idea that there are other entities that might readily pop up and take you or bless you was much more acceptable back then. Yeah.
So maybe this idea of a strict materialist sort of worldview has actually hamstrung us from understanding the larger reality because it's put the blinders on.
I say modernity is a limited hangout. In the sense.
Is this what is Beyond Conventional Physics?
Right. This is this podcast that was released in December last year. And it's co-sponsored by NASA, and it's a series of conversations on beyond conventional physics. And these guys, including Dr. Hal Puthoff and people from the Navy and the Department of Energy, they just have this leisurely conversation on all the classified stuff, UAPs being back engineered. And it was just happened like that. And this goes to say who in the secret government is trying to raise the profile of these technologies and for what reason. Like, why are they doing this?
Yeah.
Why are they going on these podcasts and talk about it? Like, who's asking them to do that?
I think they're ready to roll out this technology. I think it's time. I think they realize that whoever it is that's doing it, there's too much money to be made.
Yeah.
Well, there's that
It's too
ETF
important
fund as well.
For something we're being
ETF fund.
prepared, yeah.
I think that's
you
it.
noticed this the other day, Clint. There's like an ETF fund being set up, apparently.
Right.
The UFO tech fund. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas that
This-
was kind of icky because I was like, you guys, are you serious about that? Don't you know this technology? All the inventors that come up with this stuff magically disappear. Like, is that going to stop? Like, where is
Well, this guy, the person who's created this fund, or the firm that created this fund, is what they're doing is, it's interesting. They identified the list of companies that they think are most likely to have benefited from getting their hands on alien technology. Lockheed Martin being one of them, and then they have a list of other companies, but Lockheed's kind of like the big one. A lot of defense contractors. and they're building a fund that is a basket of those companies, and then they're shorting the stocks of their competition under the idea that, you know, they're going to have an unfair advantage over their competitors because they're alien technology. But it's also speculative. I mean, again, it's the point that you're making is so it's exactly right. It's also it's just out of reach. It's always somewhere else. It's not something that really comes into our day-to-day lives in any meaningful way. It's just something that's an interesting campfire story to talk about. And I think that's where we've been kind of stalled. We've been stalled out there. But this is really interesting, this Economic Futures podcast. You're saying that this whole thing, this whole group got together to do this talk for the purpose of moving this discussion forward, I guess, right? I mean, that's the idea. Is
Really
to start
curious what the purpose is. There are a bunch of these conversations, and they're definitely trying to make these ideas that before were kind of fringe or pseudoscience, but were actually practiced in secret programs, more mainstream. And, you know, there was a letter in The Guardian, I think last week, about scientists proclaiming that we should give cold fusion another try, that it actually have been reproduced effects of this working. And so there is something in the woods here, I believe. And that's why I also think that this consciousness technology connection to the psionic part is so important. And we'll have Peter Grenier speak on that subject on Sunday. It just gets weirder.
Do you think we get to a point in the next, say, I don't know, well, let's just say in our lifetime, do we get to a point where alien technology, NHI contact, dramatically changes everyday life for the average person in a way that would be really noticeable to a time traveler?
I think about that a lot. I believe that maybe there's going to be kind of a global self-proclaimed, I don't want to say elite, but people who take this serious and that do the work and get there. A bit like, you know, the Renaissance in Europe was kind of done by 100 people that wrote each other letters. And they did have a huge impact on history. Maybe it's like an inverted Bible Belt where there are certain people over the world who basically are certain that this is true. But this makes it sound like there are not people that think that this is true. I mean, people have psychic conversations with their hybrid children. And do we take it serious? Do we not? Like, to many people, disclosure has already happened. I mean, ask Chris Bledsoe if disclosure has happened. Ask Bertie Jaworski if disclosure has happened. These people live in a universe where this is obvious. And on good days, I live in that universe. I'm like, oh my God, this is real. What's happening?
Yeah, I know that feeling. And sometimes you go the other way, though, and you have to you have to balance it with everyday life.
Right.
We've got about 10 minutes left, George. Is there anything else you want to cover that we haven't talked about yet? There's so much to talk about here. Where should we go next?
Well, we could, I don't know, you guys, what do you think is interesting?
Well, break down the day for us. Break down the event. How is it going to flow? How do people get involved?
Absolutely. So the link is in the show notes, right? It's the Psionic Summit. And we kind of used this quote by Jake Barber, who will be showing up on the call, about outer space meets inner space. And then the subheadline is exploring the Psi Plasma Orb NHI connection. What do we mean by that? So with Psi, of course, we mean this advanced human capability of remote perception, sensing, remote viewing. With plasma orbs, we mean these weird orbs that we saw in November, but also what Chris Bledsoe reports, and many cultures for many hundreds of years have reported, that seem to be somehow a type of NHI craft or intelligent entity that float around that we can communicate with. There were a bunch of videos in November where people like talk to these orbs that show up in their backyards that are obviously not little drones with propellers or something, and they move around when they talk to them, and this is very often reported to be the case. But are they NHI or are they something else, right? And is there also a component where we kind of summon these entities, but they're part of us, an extension of our reality? Like, how do we know what's them and what's us?
How do you map this space in a
Exactly.
way? Yeah.
Yeah. So these are kind of the big question we're trying to get into. And so we have Jake Barber is going to speak on that. We have Ross Coulthard who kind of started this. I mean, if you wouldn't have leaked this conversation with Jake, then we wouldn't be having this term Psionics show up. And then we have Birdie, who is a very accomplished remote viewer who is training people at Ubiquity University. And she will speak about her, day-to-day practice of remote viewing and ET contact. Like, she has ET friends, she says about herself, people like entities she regularly checks in with.
Well, and it is true that some of the most fascinating material in the UFO space is channeled material. There's the raw material. There's tons of stuff that has been channeled over the years that now seems to be taking on a new significance with this new turn towards psionics. And Birdie, by the way, for everyone watching, Birdie's going to be back with us next week live on Wednesday. We were going to do, we were going to do it Friday, but we had to change the date. So it's going to be Wednesday, February 26th. Is that right, Zainer?
It is right, yeah, and it's my fault. We've got to change the date. My bad.
I think you have a wedding, don't you?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Not mine. I've done that. I'm not doing it again.
So get your remote viewing questions ready for Birdie. She's going to be back to talk to us about her technique, transdimensional mapping, and everything that implies as well. So, George, this is going to be, let's see here. I've got it in front of me.
Zoom webinar.
People Zoom webinar.
They get the link. They get a reminder an hour before, and then they can join on Zoom. And if our Zoom capacity is maxed out, we stream on YouTube.
And it's going to be February 23rd, 11 a.m. Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern time. 2 p.m. Eastern time. And it's going to be Jake Barber, Ross Coulthard, Bertie Jaworski, Chris Bledsoe, Richard Dolan, Dr. Jim Garrison, Dr. Sean Esbjorn Hargens, Sarah Gam, Pippa Malmgren, Bob Grenier, David Clements, and Georg Boch.
This guy.
All together. This guy.
Yeah.
This has been a wonderful conversation. We got to have you back, George. This was really fun.
Yes. I think Birdie and I are a great combination to have on your show. I really like your show. And how did you come up with the title Night Shift? Like, how does that come into place?
Oh my gosh, that's got a long story to it. But I used to work the night shift long time ago at a teeny tiny little local cable access station that did TV shows for the local community. And I would drive home at night really late, and I would listen to Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, and I would have that on in my radio, and I would just drive home listening to it. And so when I started this show, I wanted to not give a nod to that. That was my time to listen to UFO stuff, and so I called it the Night Shift.
Maybe just final words here. I believe that the subject needs to become more mainstream, and kind of the beachhead market, as stupid as it sounds, are the cultural creatives, like the people that were kind of out there but didn't want to deal with the subject for whatever reason. People that go to Aslan, go to Burning Man, the yoga yogurt crowd.
Mm-hmm.
They might be happy talking about chakras, but they're not happy or ready to talk about Roswell. But we need to talk about Roswell. Roswell did happen, and the people there had psychic contact with the bodies that were laying on the tables. They're very well reported stories. And so it's just this repressed material needs to come into what we think of as progressive or, postmodern culture. And if we manage to do that, and it becomes part of our spiritual understanding of the cosmos, it's going to be huge,
It's going to happen at the same time as the technological singularity.
Right.
If that all comes together the way that it looks like it's coming together, the next 25 years are going to be insane.
Wow, man. And like, it's like the countdown. I feel like I'm sitting at the countdown, and the countdown is like slowing down sometimes. Sometimes it's faster, but there definitely is a countdown. And that's why my X channel is called the Triangularity, because of this, triple disruption of NHI, this new physics that it's actually not new, but has been repressed, is now can't be repressed anymore, because you can ask Rock 3 about it and it will tell you what's going on. And AGI,
It's unbelievable. It's really a weird time to be alive.
Determine our lives, you guys.
It's the strangest time to be alive. Like, I just watched the robotics thing today. That was an announcement of the two robots that work together as a team. Did you see this? They can like give tasks to each other, and they work together as a unit. And I'm like, it's like year after year, we're making 10 years of progress for every 12 months that goes by. It's really, really unbelievable. George, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time. The website is ubiquityuniversity.org/psionics-summit. You can go there, register for free. This is Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. Join this free Zoom webinar. Listen to this all-star lineup. This really is this is the list of people you want to hear from, for sure. 2025, it's the year of psionics. Who knew? And 2026 may be the year of contact. George, thank you so much. We'll have you back again soon.
I'd love to. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
All right. See you soon.
Okay. John Stewart is on deck. Guys, this is the second half. John, welcome back to the show. It's so good to see you, my friend. How have you been? It's been a minute since we caught up, and a lot's happened. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. It's been a crazy past 3 days, which is funny that this is happening right before my appearance with your show, which is why I'm going to make, I think, one of the biggest announcements in ufology. Not so much what I'm about to say, but I am about to say, the meaning of what it does to uh, this crazy 3 minute film, this alien interview film that's been out for 30 years. I think today we're going to make history. And as always, unlike most ufologists, I am here naming names once again.
John, you have famously been pouring your heart and soul and energy and resources and time and effort into understanding the mystery of this Victor alien interview. I assume that's what we're going to be talking about today. For people who haven't seen it and aren't familiar with it, can you set this up for them and explain what is the Victor interview and why is it so important to you?
1996, the late summer of 96, a man calls a second tier video production company in Beverly Hills called Rocket Pictures. And he says, I've got a 3 minute tape of an underground facility of an interview of a gray extraterrestrial. Oh, they're a second tier production company. They're not, Paramount or Warner Brothers or Fox or NBC. So they allow him to come in. He comes in with this crazy 3 minute videotape, which we have proven with 5 witness statements that this company didn't produce this tape. Whoever this man was did bring this VHS tape in. They pop it in the VHS. The entire staff of Rocket, there was probably 7, 8 people, get around the TV and they see this blue hueish screen. That's not the actual video. That's been theatrically darkened, but the actual video was a blue hueish screen, very close circuit camera looking, of a 3 minute video of an alleged interrogation of an extraterrestrial of a facility down south of Area 51. Medics come in. When the creature goes into distress, he has a respiratory or coughing facility. And the film ends, and it comes on the heels of the alien autopsy, which was proven to be a hoax. And this is called the forgotten documentary. It fades in reflection. I think it's too bizarre. It bounces off of people's confirmation bias that there's no way we're going to see a live extraterrestrial. Okay, Wheel of Fortune's
Well,
coming on. Let's go concentrate on that.
you know, the 90s was a weird decade. There was such a push. There was so much UFO stuff going on at that time, but it was pre-internet. And for people who are the young guns out there who may not remember that period very well, you had the X-Files was like the #1 show in the world. And it was every Friday night or whatever. It was UFOs on parade. There were like 5 or 6 different UFO shows on all at the same time. UFO documentaries coming out left and right. And I remember Alien Autopsy came out, and Jonathan Frakes did this whole special, and they were like, "Fact or fiction? What is it?" And this Victor interview, I remember seeing it, and then it quickly disappeared, and I never saw it again. And then it was just a few years ago, it came across my radar again, and I watched it, and I remembered watching it and looking at this creature's eyes. And there's something, I can't put my finger on it, but there's something about the way that the eyes move that is just unsettling. And I've never been able to shake that. And I know people are kind of mixed on this video about what it is and what it could mean, but it's definitely, it's reached legend status. I mean, it really is a part of the UFO mystery landscape and has been for some time.
Yeah, it's truly a bizarre film. It's an easy film to whistle past, darkened room. It's got to be a puppet. Come on, you think the government's not going to mobilize the 101st Mountain Division, you know, to tear down this production company and put a injunction on the UPN network where it was shown? I mean, come on, the government's not going to let an actual alien video on TV. But what I'm about to tell you, it calls into question our own reality and this video, because no one, I think, is going to give me or themselves or the UFO world a definitive answer of, which is what the UFO world said 30 years ago. If you find Victor, you're going to prove the video. If you find Victor's identity, and he's an actor, or he's a schlub, or a video production guy, or an FX guy, hoax, right? But if you find Victor, he's not an actor, he's not a video production guy or a special effects guy. Now, what does the UFO world say? Why is, as we know now, a man working at Area 51, why does he have possession of a $25,000 to $150,000 hoaxed video production of an alien? Why? How? That's the question. And I think today people are going to go back to scratching their heads and saying, "Oh shit, he's not an actor." So yeah, it's been a crazy week. I got my first death threat last night, which was lovely. As I plugged being on this show in my announcement. So that was exciting for us.
Did you get another one this morning, right?
And I got another one this morning. Right. Be careful. You know what we're capable of. Well, I sent it to you.
You sent it to me.
Because John Stewart, when he opens his mouth about something, has the documentation, unlike most ufologists. So,
well, I want to say,
stuff.
So with regard to the Victor interview, we interviewed Danny Sheehan over, it's almost a year ago. And in that interview, that was the interview where he said there would be a videotaped interview with an extraterrestrial that was going to be released. And that's when you would know. I asked him, when is disclosure going to happen? Like, what's it going to be? What did we need to see? And he said, there is a videotaped interrogation. You're going to see it. It's going to come out. And when that happens, that's going to be the big news. And that quote from him blew up and it went crazy. It was actually one of the first huge videos that we did on this channel. And then you and I started talking, and I found out about your work into this
Right.
project. And you also broke the Lockheed firefight story, which a lot of people forgot about, and then it came up
Wait a
again
minute.
recently.
Yeah.
Well, it's like you have been doing the work. You've been out there grinding away on this. What has the reaction been from the UFO community in general, and what's your take on the temperature of the UFO world right now?
Look, I rub people the wrong way for whatever reason. I trigger some kind of narcissistic response, some wounded childhood response. I'm not being smug or snarky. Clint, I mean, other than I almost get like the Corey Good, David Wilcox treatment. And despite saying I don't know anything, I have all the documents that I talk about. I tell people do your own homework. I tell people email me. I'll send you what I was shown or what I was sent. I think it's too deep. It's too close to the wound, the stuff that I have released. And those people that just don't like me, whether the way I look, the way I talk, my pro wrestler damaged brain, which I have, and forget things, I don't know. I just trigger a negative response in a lot of people. I am simply saying that um, I think since I went on Martin Luther King Day to a congressman's office in Wisconsin, that someone is either feeding me information and then putting something else out to back it up, or somebody is following what I'm doing and actually helping me to prove what is coming out of my mouth or telling people what I've been emailed or shown, if that makes sense. Because I have an alien interview video. Danny Sheen comes out with an alien interview. And by the way, Danny Sheen's alien interview, Danny and I both agree, is from the 60s. Okay. It is not my alien. I go to a congressman about an extraterrestrial interrogation and retention program that we have actual live or did alien beings. I go to congressman's office. 3 months later, David Grush shows up, a counterintelligence person. And I love David. David's a sweetheart. He's a patriot. I love that guy. But I'm just saying, counterintelligence guy shows up and says, "Oh, we have craft and we have alien beings, biologics." Exactly what I said and was telling congressmen. Then I get some kid that emails me that Lockheed had a near perfect craft, perfected it by using psionics, melding the pilot with the craft. Oh yeah, I was the one that came up with psionics and this telepathic, this brain merger with the craft that Lockheed perfected. And I bring this story out, and Clint, you remember? I
I
mean, I
saw the
came on your
emails.
show,
Yep.
right? But before I show the emails, the internet wanted to crucify me, like like I was Barabbas, and hanging on the cross. And then, sudden, this sweetheart, Jake Barber, comes out and says, "Oh yeah, I wrote the manuscript to a firefight where men were murdered and where craft and other things were recovered, like laptops. There was firefights. We were set up." And I was like, I can't believe this. Here is another guy, another person from the military and the government coming forward, mentioning my name, of course, because we don't want to do that. And but mentioning no, an aerospace company, Wink, Lockheed, has had firefights. People have been murdered during the recovery of items. I will say.
I remember when that story, when you were breaking that story,
Oh,
it was too, when I first heard it, it was so hot. I didn't even want to touch it. I thought I would burn myself. It was like, I felt weird even talking about it. Cause it just something about it was like, this one is dangerous. You shouldn't go there. And it was crazy. And I thought for sure this was going to get buried. They were going to just like lock this one away. And it comes back up again a year later. We're talking about the same exact thing, but we've got more context. It's crazy.
thank you for bringing that up. Right. We have now video, a tier one special forces helicopter operator. We have another video of some weird round white eggish type of object that was released last week. And we have Jake Barber's superiors. People have argued with me with this. I went back. They did say it. He had one of his superiors, I can't think of his name. He had a maroon shirt on, and he said to Ross Coulthard, and people have been murdered during during these recoveries, murdered.
Yeah.
And people said, how could you accuse an aerospace company of murder? I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just telling you what I was told. And now you have Jake Barber's um, superior saying the same thing, and which probably leads us to the invasion, which you guys were just talking about. I get a crazy email from a man who's a master's in electrical engineering. He worked alongside DARPA, this crazy defense uh, company that develops all of these weapons. And he said, "Look, heard you on a bunch of podcasts. I like the way you operate. I want to tell you something." I put it on the shelf. He writes back a year later. He goes, "Didn't you read my essay?" And I read his essay, and it's like, look, the beings don't care one way or another about us. They care about the planet. They're not going to let us. They're not just. There's the punchline. They're not going to let us blow each other up. Um, but they're coming back for their equipment, their bodies, and resources that they need. They're coming back. So I put this out on the internet. Again, like the Lockheed fight. All of a sudden, 3 or 4 weeks later, some like scientist from Europe is like, there's an object inbound to the planet. And then you have government officials talking about invasion or teasing something coming in 2026, 2027. I said 2027, by the way, because that's what I was told. And then you have the drone invasion. And this scientist would not back down from using the words invasion. And then all of a sudden, the whole drone fiasco comes out weeks after I bring this to the internet, bragging, want a pat in the back. I'm simply saying to the skeptics out there, do you think there's some tangential relationship here where this I am getting fed information and then someone who wants some sort of disclosure is wheeling out just like a well executed play or musical on stage, other people that are backing up my stories. And
I think that's
I
totally plausible.
yeah.
Why isn't that plausible? Think about it. I mean, the information needs to get out. People on the inside want the information to get out, but they're not in a position to do it. So they're going to feed it to the people who are in a position to do it. It's up to us to figure out what all this stuff means. But it's totally plausible. And I want to this sets us up nicely for, you put out a press release that I'm going to read really quickly because it blew up the internet. It broke Reddit. Your press release broke Reddit. And then I want to talk about this announcement. So this says,
because I have a public statement, but yes, please go ahead.
Do you want to do the public statement, or do you want me to do the press release first?
Sure. I think the public statement basically says what the press release says. So
okay,
you don't want to, yeah. So bear with me. Thank you to everyone that's going to listen to this. 2 weeks ago, Mr. Matt Bells of the Limitless podcast, that I was on, suggested that I show the name and photo of my Victor suspect that I put out on my documentary, Alien Interview, Case Closed, ufologist Stan Dale, to show Stan Dale's picture and name to the only person that has ever seen Victor as Victor, CEO of Rocket Pictures, Tom Coleman, and the director, Jeff Broadstreet. To be clear, Clint, to be clear, a while back, right before my release of my documentary, I did send Jeff Broadstreet the name of Stan Dale with a side-by-side comparison photo of Victor, unredacted by a Reddit angel, and Stan Dale. When Jeff Broadstreet, clearly confronted with, in my opinion, that I found Victor, did not email me back, which is not like Jeff Broadstreet's behavior. I assumed wrongly that he might have been flabbergasted by the photo in the name, knew that I had found Victor without paying Jeff Broadstreet an enormous monetary sum, and just didn't want to email me back. However, I did contact Mr. Broadstreet. I paid him. And upon receiving information suggesting that Stan Dale was not Victor, upon hearing this from Jeff Broadstreet, I immediately called Stan Dale and reached out to him personally and apologized for any unintended implications. I would like to say happily that Stan Dale was incredibly gracious and supportive, encouraging me to continue my investigation in pursuit of the truth of the identity of the whistleblower Victor. I deeply appreciate his understanding and his words of encouragement as I moved forward. A week ago, in my ongoing effort to verify Victor's identity, with the generous, unbelievable help of also an amateur ufologist, Mr. Brian Pemble of Arizona, who I think should be up there with all of the greats of ufology for his courage and his monetary participation. An agreement was reached with the only man who had direct knowledge of and had seen Victor, director Jeff Broadstreet, of the two alien interview documentaries. Through this arrangement, Jeff Broadstreet, in an email, disclosed to me the following: that he was shown a social security card from Victor bearing the full name. I will now share, finally, after 30 years, Victor's actual full name. Victor's full name, as it appeared on the social security card that he produced to Jeff Broadstreet, is Stanton John Willett. We are still verifying if it was one T or two T's because Jeff Broadstreet was scrambling information because he was not allowed to photocopy the social security card. Additionally, the first three digits of the social security number were 262, indicating that Stanton John Willett, aka Victor, was born in Florida. Now, I want to be very careful here because I am asking for people's help. There is a John Stanton Willett, born in Florida, but Jeff Broadstreet was adamant that the Social Security card did not show John Stanton Willett. It showed Stanton John Willett. And by the way, the other John Stanton Willett lived 20 minutes from my house and died back in October. That is not Victor. Mr. Broadstreet also stated with a chuckle that Victor is not Professor Gerald Schwartz, Whitley Strieber, Bob Dean, or Bob Lazar, and he will go on camera to testify to this. Following this lead, I consulted a military insider with access to the Groom Lake entry log, who confirmed to me that an individual named Stanton John Willett was present at the base at a time between 1977 to 1991. This revelation marks a turning point in the alien interview investigation, bringing us closer than ever to uncovering finally, after 30 years, the full truth about Victor's identity and the oranges of this footage. The pieces are finally coming together, and we remain committed to exposing the reality behind one of the most controversial and significant UFO related leaks in American history. I am simply asking the internet community, especially the skeptics, to explain to a rational human being why a former worker of Groom Lake had in possession a film and VHS tape of an extraterrestrial alien interview, whether it is fake or not, and how and why would this man have made this film knowing the money that he received in 1996. I thank you for your time and I thank you for listening to me. Victor has finally correctly been named. Stanton John Willett, an employee of Area 51. And if someone can come to me and say, this is why how he could have got this film, I'm all ears. And I go back to the UFO community who challenged me 30 years ago, find out Victor's identity, who he is, you prove the film. I found his identity. He was an employee to whatever degree on Groom Lake, and he is the leaker of that film. And I will also say, Clint, one last thing. 4 years ago, Dr. Stephen Greer boldly predicted, almost prophetically, by telling me that film is too weird. I think one day you're going to find out that it's either real or it's fake, but bottom line, that film was filmed by the government. Whether it's a real authentic interview or the government in their PSYOP magic disinformation department created that very elaborate film with top secret coding that only the government could know. And as Dr. Greer would tell you, the truth is stranger than fiction. If it's not a real extraterrestrial, then why is the government spending tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars hoaxing the American public? Thank you.
You make an excellent point. There's no question that there have been hoaxes over the years that have been perpetrated on the community to confuse and disorient people, throw them off the trail. And I think people are so hungry for some kind of smoking gun evidence at this point. The powers that be know that, and they feed on that. There's no question about it. Xander, what do you make of this? What do you think of this news?
Reading the comments, I think we just need to lay out the facts step by step, just because that was a long statement. It was, I understood it, but some people might not. So let's just recap. Right. So originally, and last week in your podcast with, I'm sorry, I forget the name of the podcast. I watched it earlier, though. It was
Limitless Podcast.
That's the one.
Matt,
you were 99% certain it was Standeo. And
yes,
we know now 100% it wasn't Standeo.
1,000%. Yes.
Yep. My understanding is that as a result of the podcast itself, based on the actual host, who actually seems to like to get involved in the research itself, he gave you the idea to basically go back, and effectively he mentioned, I believe it was the director or the producer of the documentary that was aired long ago, the one man basically that has seen Victor in real life. And he said, I'll reach out to him, and basically, but you, as far as I understand it, based on what you've sent us, you decided to do that yourself. You paid him, and if you're happy, just because everyone always asks for receipts, if you're happy for me to share it, I will share. Okay, all right. Just give me a second.
Here's the big middle finger to the skeptics. Thank you. I forgot I even sent you it.
Look, as I said, like, receipts are important at this point. This is obviously just a screenshot. We can't show you John's PayPal account or anything like that. That's just not going to happen. We're not going to show you email addresses. So let's just get that. But if John wants to fake these kind of screenshots, that's fine. I think it'd be pointless, but let me share it anyway. Right.
And to Xander, let me tell you, Jeff, originally, why this didn't happen 4 years ago when I contacted Jeff, he wanted $15,000. That wasn't going to happen. So that's why I tried to sell it to Netflix. Is this making sense to everybody? $15,000 to the director, $20,000 to make the animatronic puppet, $15,000 to hyper examine the footage. I spent $2,700, but to really do a top level job, the guy wanted like $15,000. I didn't have this money for this investigation. So this is why I tried to find the name. And then I finally got Jeff Broadstreet, whittling him down year after year, bringing the price down to finally $4,000. And I didn't even have that available for this documentary. And that's when Brian Pemble came in and split it with me. And there it is, folks. Now, Jeff wanted $4,000, and then he said, well, you have to pay me the fees. So that's what the $125 was for, the fees that he got charged for the $4,000. There it is, proof. I paid him, and it was $15,000 at one time. I just could not afford it. And Jeff has been great.
That wasn't, like, as far as I'm aware, that's not crowdsourced money. You paid, albeit you split it, whatever. Still, $2,000 is a lot. Is a lot to pay for a name, and that's what you've paid. So before anybody, starts talking about money grabbing and stuff, that's a lot of money to pay for a name. Like it
Yeah,
is.
I'm 30,000 into this investigation. You can ask my wife, who I get reminded weekly. $30,000 of my own money, and I'm one of the cheapest human beings on the planet.
You're
To
a car
prove
salesman, that's why.
Well, I'm not a car. I owned a used car dealership.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
But anyways, I sold cars. Yeah, of course I did in college. But yeah, I mean, so yeah, I talk about put your money where your mouth is. I did it, and sending that PayPal for $4,000, and I never could have done it unless Brian Pemble, this another internet angel, said, "I believe in you. Let's solve this thing. You'll get it back to me some way." He Venmoed me the $2,000, and boom, we sent it to Jeff Broadstreet. And remember, Jeff Broadstreet 2 years ago, I paid him $500, told me the first name Stanton, but to never call him Stan. And I want to tell people this. I thought that was code, like wink. I don't want to violate my NDA, John. His name is Stan. So when I saw Stan Deo, who, by the way, Stan Deo, after listening to my entire investigation, told uh, a radio listeners, I totally understand why John identified me as Victor. Even though I'm not, I do get it. I look just like Victor. So please remember that. So I thought it was Stan Deo because Jeff Broadstreet, I assume wrong, said, but don't call him Stan. I thought it was code like, hey, his name is Stan, but it wasn't. And that's when Jeff said, I told you his name is Stanton.
So we'll go to the email next, if you don't mind. Again,
Fantastic.
just trying to show receipts. So
Yeah.
here we go. It's the
And
email you got from John.
It does say per our agreement. Okay, great. That's from Jeff Broadstreet.
Yep. And yeah, it's displaying everything you just said. Stanton John Willett, Social Security, blah, blah, blah. And even, alluded to where they picked him up from the airport when they went to meet him and things like that.
Right.
John, did they pay for the footage? They paid him, Victor?
Yes, Jeff says that he will tell this all in a story on camera. Jeff isn't totally sure because Tom Coleman, the CEO, didn't really elaborate with Jeff, but Jeff seems to think around $25,000 to 35,000. So again, where's the money to make that film? Now we have an FX person. I could do that for $8,000 in my garage. Okay. We have a Disney vice president that said about 150. We had another special effects person that if you walked in as a retail customer, without a doubt, $125,000. So even if it was 60 grand to get the actors, then remember the general on the left. I've identified him as General Earl Gray, who's only in the foreshadow, who was head of Signal Corps back in 1991, which dealt with communications. Remember, folks, I talked to the widow of the doctor on the alien's right, my left, who saw the video and said, that's my husband, Dr. Wilford Webb Wilson. And she said, you're solving a family secret. He never talked about his time as a medical doctor for the United States government and the United States Air Force. Dr. Webb Wilson is the doctor to our left and to the bean's right, identified by his second wife, widow, because he died in Watsonville, California. I talked to the widow that identified her husband on the film. This isn't just getting Victor's name, folks.
Let's just bring it back to the story just very quickly.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. I know, I get this is like years of your life and a lot of your money. I fully accept that. And you're emotionally attached to this. I think that's commendable. Totally. Absolutely. I was saying to Clint earlier, that intro video, I've spent like all week making it and nobody's going to give a fuck about it. Let's be honest. But
people give a fuck.
For me, it really matters. And, because we attach emotion to the hard work that we put into things. But anyway, let's go one step further. You've got Stanton John Willis, right? That's the name you've been given. You now have to tie that to somebody working at Groom Lake.
Yes.
And from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, or at least go further into this part of the story, you have your, let's call him an insider, that has access to the logs from between the time that the interview was supposed to take place.
The Groom Lake Nellis Teston Training Range entry log from 77 to 91, which also, people don't like to hear this, shows that Bob Lazar, I don't know what he did there. Bob Lazar was on Groom Lake for 92 days. You know, oh God, John's proving another thing. He's in the logbook. So this is a logbook, entry logbook from Groom Lake in the Nellis Teston Training Range from 77 to 91. We've gotten a full log entry from another person we thought was Victor 2 years ago, a Stanton Howe, anyways. And this logbook right now is sitting at the Inspector General's office in Washington, D.C., just to add a little bit more hype to how important this logbook is.
Just
and I called.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, you go ahead.
No, and so I picked up the phone, or picked up my phone, and emailed my military person with information to that log. He called somebody in Washington, D.C., and this is his email. Go ahead.
Just before we do that, Clint, we absolutely must shout out the person that's just made 100
Sound Effect 68.
Yeah, let's just share that on screen a second. That's
Sound Effect 68.
See,
Thank you so much.
I'm making people money.
You're
Except
you're
yourself.
changing lives.
I'm putting butts in the seat, baby.
I think it's the Sound Effect 68. Thank you so much. The super chat
That's
says,
awesome.
I think it's time to make a donation to the channel. I still need this all explaining and summarizing by Clint or some other time. P.S. Have a beer on me. Thank you so much. We will get some beers on that for sure.
More XLR cables.
More XLR cable. That's right.
So back to the email. So again, people, this is probably the part of your story that people are going to hold your feet to the fire more than anything, because this is the only part of your story that really people have to trust your word with, and it's your insider, who we fully understand. Well, I personally understand. You can't reveal their identity. Fine.
Of course.
This is a screenshot of the email.
That's right.
Again, let's be real. Anybody could write this. That's
of course.
But we
That's
can't
absolutely
reveal.
of course.
We absolutely can't. If this is a legitimate source, we can't reveal the email address or any personally identifying information.
I think it's really unique also that just to tell me Stanton Willett was on Groom Lake, that he also says, believe it or not, there was another Willett, a David Jonas Willett, also on Groom Lake.
So I think it might be at least two leads to go on.
Absolutely.
So you could at least look for David Jonas Willett or Stanton
Right.
John Willett.
And I'm asking for the internet's help once again. Let's help bring this home for John Stewart. You'll never see me again after Thanksgiving this year. I'll go away. Help me bring this home.
Help
Find
John
me-
solve this.
Find me Stanton John Willett, who might have lived in Rancho Cucamonga, California. Please.
So-
Now our source is going. Now I should have sent you this, and I'm sorry I didn't. We got the entire log entry of this Stanton Howe a year and a half ago. It said the date of where they were the dates that they were allowed to go in, last name first, then first name and initial, and then the company that they're there for, Lockheed, Raytheon. My Stanton Howe was Lockheed. And whether he was like an overnight guest, whether he was civilian, CIV, or military, and it's in this real funky, like Times Roman font, and the guy redacted the top and the bottom because it showed other log entries. I talked to Stanton Howe's kids, who don't want me to call them anymore, but yes, they said their dad did work for Lockheed. He did a bunch of radar applications, went to Iran a lot, and he was on. We finally saw what the log entry looks like, not just somebody telling me. And I'll send that to you, Xander, if you ever want to pick this subject back up. And I should.
Yeah, I mean, you can send things in real time. We can share them.
I
as
could
we
do it
go,
right now.
if you want to.
We could do it now.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
It's bizarre.
at some point, John, people are going to want to know more about this whistleblower, because honestly, the revelation that, and this is like the alien interview video is like, that's like ingrained. That's like, I think that was probably like peak when I was just getting into the topic. It was like around 1997 when it was really sort of like cooking for me. And I remember seeing that interview, and it is, I do think it's an important interview, particularly if we can confirm the person that had the VHS and that they were at Area 51. Those are two very big connectors. And if we can do that...
I just sent you the log entry. Clint, this is really cool. I mean, it's just, you could just tell, like, a pro wrestler didn't make this up. This is from my leaker, okay? And he is going to tell me who Stanton worked for. He is just a little leery right now because it's sitting at the Inspector General's office in Washington. But we'll get it. We'll get where Stanton worked. So here is Stanton Howe, a false victor, about a year and a half ago. Alexander, I sent you his obituary and the Groom Lake log. Clint, it's really
bear
weird.
with me a second.
Really cool. Yeah. Just send it to you.
Clint, as I do that, feel free to fill the noise. Hang on.
Yeah, Clint, can I say something? I'm asking for people's help. I'm not telling you that, just because of this and that. Look, Jeff Broadstreet is just straight and narrow. When he signs his name to an agreement, that guy is to the letter of the law. And he said, John, and when he corrected me, he said, no. The Social Security card said Stanton John Willett, not John Stanton Willett. Because I sent them.
Did they cut him a check, or was it cash, or like is there a paper trail of where they paid him and who paid him and where all that money went?
Of course, it was. I remember Jeff telling me it was a check in the first, and I'm paraphrasing Jeff here. Check first time, and 1,000%. The '08 documentary, we see a Ziploc baggie of cash in the door panel of the Honda CRV that Victor is being interviewed in, and Jeff Broadstreet confirmed that they paid him cash the second time. And Victor said he was dying, and Jeff Broadstreet said he wasn't dying, in my opinion. I think the coughs were a little feigned, and I know that there it is.
Okay, so just so I'm clear.
Let me just say something first.
Go ahead.
This is the first actual document ever leaked out of Area 51, period. And you're looking at it.
So what's the significance of Stanton Howe in this story?
Because Jeff Broadstreet told us his first name is Stanton. So for 9 months, I looked up every obituary, Ancestry.com, for a guy named Stanton that lived in California that was a scientist. Fair enough? I came across this man who said he was a scientist. He has the same tweed jacket that Victor wore in the '08 documentary. I embarrassed myself to his children, who told me, don't ever contact us again. But before they did that, they told me, yes, our dad was involved in radar for Lockheed, and he went to Iran a bunch of times. And I said, I've got him at Area 51. And the older son said, that doesn't surprise me. He worked in radar, did on government programs, and went to Iran a lot in the early 70s.
Okay, so the significance of the log entry is that you were sent that, I believe, by the same person that's now confirming that the other Stanton. Does that make sense? Is that completely right? Just wanted to make sure how this all fits together, because this is, I'm just acting as a viewer here. I'm learning this at the same time.
At some point, Xander, he had the logbook, but they transferred over to the Attorney General because he's a whistleblower. And now it's like he's got to ask people, but he said, I will go back and call to find out who Stanton was there, on what company Stanton was there on behalf of, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Raytheon, Lockheed, EG&G, TRW, you name it. We'll get that eventually. But I need the internet's help. This guy is nowhere on the internet. I've got a private eye for another $500 in Chicago. She can't find him. So, but that doesn't mean he's not, that we can't find him. There's people that would know the name. And this is what it's, doing the Oprah effect. Let's get this again. I am asking the internet's help. We've got Victor's name. Let's
Okay.
try and find him.
Okay, sorry, Clint. I know I'm talking too much here, but I had an hour free earlier after this.
Not at all. Go ahead, man.
I'll
This
be
is
honest.
great.
We were sent these documents that I've been sharing on screen. We were sent them maybe an hour or two before the stream started, just so that we could actually queue them up and share them and stuff. So, right. So,
Let's talk about real quick what it would mean if, like, what is in the Victor interview itself? What is he telling us about the being, about what's happening to the being? Like, what information was actually imparted in that video that is significant for people to know who haven't seen it or who aren't familiar with it?
He won't share why he was there. He said that he had a reason to be down at S4. That the being came in 1989. It died shortly after this interview took place, because we know from a defense intelligence, an alleged defense intelligence agency memo, that the group that runs the extraterrestrial interview facility, S2 Alpha, that this interview was filmed on April 22nd, 1991. The being died shortly after this interview took place. This interview was being filmed on behalf of the Department of Naval Intelligence, which I have proved via a CIA director, a senator, a conference brochure, and a naval aviator, that the DNI exists, also proving Bob Lazar's story. He said that it was a dog and pony show. The medics really didn't know what to do when these beings were in distress. The scientists became very deflated because they could not understand the concepts of the extraterrestrial beings in these thought projection interviews. The attrition rate was very high for the scientists because their minds were blown. They just could not.
So
they could not take the ego deflation.
Let's pause there, because I think it's important to highlight this. We're talking about what year was 1991?
1991, April 22nd,
when it was
1991. Yes, sir.
Then in the interview with Victor, when you watch the original interview and you hear Victor's voice, he is explaining, this is 1991 when it's recorded, and then the documentary 97. So 1997, in the interview, Victor is saying there is a telepath in the room on the other side of the glass, right? Isn't it on the other side of the glass? There's a human
who my contact spoke to 3 weeks ago. He's at a monastery in Vermont. I know it sounds like the Da Vinci Code.
No. This is because, but that's the whole point, though. It's like you've got, again, here you are ahead of the curve, right? Victor's talking about a telepath in the room. This is 1997. 97, people would be like, telepaths, UFOs. What are you talking about? Now, Jake Barber is saying the exact same thing. He's saying we have teams of these guys. In fact, as a matter of fact, he said when he talked about Michael Herrera and Herrera's sighting in the Philippines? I think it was the Philippines, where he saw the 8 gone. And he said they had all these shipping containers. All these shipping containers with like air conditioner units on them. And he was like, he thought that was something to do with human trafficking. And Jake Barber said, no, those are all telepaths. They set those up. That's the setup. They roll in with these like shipping containers, and inside there's a telepath. They're super comfortable. They've got a chair. They're all set up for their comfort for them to work. And that there's this whole program that has been tied to the UFO program, the telepathy program, psionics program, and the UFO program are actually one and the same. And it's crazy how we've come full circle, and it took 30 years, and now here we are again. We're talking about the same exact thing.
You also add in the firefight, like that Jake has just talked about between over the Tough books.
Yes. Yes. Now some people will watch this.
Do you want to see a picture of the telepath?
Yeah, you got to. Oh my gosh, here we go.
If you can share this,
this took a year of negotiations to release an artist rendition of the telepath.
Okay, so it's an artist rendition.
Quote unquote Joseph, who our contact made a visit to 3 weeks ago in Mount Equinox, Vermont. He's 91, and he said the aliens, we finally figured out what they were trying to say. They don't understand our concept of time, that they use time sequence. They measure time in experiences. And Brother Joseph told my contact that several of these monks have been used by intelligence since the late 40s, for all kinds of counterintelligence operations, figuring out who might be a spy, and also these extraterrestrial programs. And I will say this, he said the United States intelligence community found us, found our ability, they call it the gift, because somebody was using telepathy with the United States government, whatever that program was called, um, that they were using telepathy, and they kept seeing this building in Mount Equinox, Vermont. Intelligence agents went to the building, talked to these monks, and realized they had this gift, and they recruited several of these monks to be um, psionics, telepathic agents of military intelligence. He's 91. That photo was in the 80s. Brother Joseph, the Charterhouse Transformational Monastery. Yeah, I know.
He's
What else?
alive still?
Still alive. He's 91 years
Those
old.
guys live forever.
3 weeks ago. Yeah, that he knows his time is.
Do they have internet at this monastery? Can we interview him?
No, they do not. And they basically take a public vow of silence. We had to arrange for the meeting. That took months. You have no idea what I've been through. Just to
Wow.
release this photo for a year of negotiation. And then finally I came up with, well, what if I do an artist rendition? And Brother Joseph said, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
Wow.
So you got a telepath, folks. You're welcome.
So he's saying, again, back to the Victor, the statement that Victor's making. He says there's a telepath in the room, and then he says that the being starts to experience distress, and he also says that the medics that you see come into the room, he's like, we don't have the best medical team.
No.
He's like, they get kind of the B team guys, because those are the people who, I guess they don't get pick of the litter so much as they get the people that they can trust to be secret.
Victor said in 96, here, folks, you want a breadcrumb trail? Victor says in 96, the medics are chosen more for their ability to keep secrets than their medical knowledge. 30 years later, an 80-year-old woman tells me that her marriage almost dissolved to this U.S. Air Force Army medic doctor because he was so secretive that it almost dissolved their marriage. I was told this when she identified her husband on that film. And she said, John, a light bulb is coming over my head. You are solving a family secret. I get it now why Webb, his nickname, was so secretive. Dr. Wilford Webb Wilson, Watsonville, California, who was also sheep-dipped because you can't find anything on him except his obituary and a 6th grade picture that I found on Ancestry.com.
John,
on the beans right. So if you don't think I didn't do my homework, folks, I did my homework.
You've obviously spent thousands of hours investigating this, and you're up to your eyeballs in the Victor story and the mythos and the whole history of this documentary. Yeah. I wonder, are you familiar with the Dan Burrish case at all? Are you familiar with that guy?
You're kidding me, right?
Right. I'm talking about it because I asked because some people aren't, and I just, I always want to ask. But the reason I asked is because in Dan's interview, which is also broke the internet, Dan says there's like a 2-hour suit up, boot up procedure before you can even go into the room with this being. Like they put on a space suit. They have to catheterize him. He says they ground his eyeglass prescription into the glass of his helmet, because he had to wear this and go into the room in what they called the clean sphere, where this being was, and they had to walk through an airlock to get into this thing, and it was like a whole process. And then in this video, in the Victor interview, we see guys in like T-shirts, like two guys in scrubs and gloves come in, and they're just like touching this thing. Can you talk about that? Because I think a lot of people would go, well, how can you have a guy with no containment suit walk into a room with an alien? Wouldn't they get strep throat and die, or God knows what we would get from them?
Because there was more than one species down at this facility, S2 alpha. And if Dan Burrish was with my being, my alien was degrading fast Did they then put him in a airtight sphere to prop him up more, to help him live longer? I don't know. I don't know. All I know is Victor said that this being died sometime in late of 1991. But I also know they had different species of beings there. One of the conjecture stories, conjecture, folks, I can't prove this, was that one being could only breathe methane gas. That this is why many of the beings die when their craft crashes and they go outside in the environment. They can't handle the oxygen. Now, oxygen was not the ultimate perfect beneficial environment for this being we see in my video. It was actually a little bit of a heavier element or a heavier air quality than he was used to, which is why they said he was hunched over when he was not being interviewed. So, Dan Burrish, I looked at my wife in the hotel room in Las Vegas and said, I'm going to go find a guy and I'll be back in a couple hours. I spent 5 hours in the Las Vegas sun going to 7 apartment complexes, knocking on doors, trying to find Dan Burrish, and I missed him by
Oh my
about a week.
God. You just rolled up on people.
I just rolled up on people. The one police, and here I am in my faggoty golf shorts, in my golf t-shirt, in these very low end apartment complexes. There's one police officer from North Las Vegas pulls up. He goes, "Are you the owner, the landlord?" I'm like, "No, I'm looking for a guy." And he goes, "Do you know where you are?" I'm like, I do, but I had to knock on his door, and the police officer was like, "Okay." My wife's like, do you have another family? Are you looking for drugs? What?" Looking
Both.
at me on Life 360 going, "Where are you? What are you doing?" I had to explain to her what I was really trying to do. Look for this guy, Dan Burrish. Dan will not email me back. His wife or girlfriend, Marjorie, something with an M, she won't email me back. But my friend, Brian Jackson, is going to release an entire huge dissertation, proving Dan's background, educational background, which they tried to Bob Lazar him, proving what his
They
mother
totally
said.
tried to Bob Lazar him. They
Totally.
100%. We had Brian on the show. Brian's a friend, and he's been on the show too.
Awesome.
He did a exhaustive research project into Dan and found the paper
Incredible.
trail. I mean, it's unbelievable. People hate on Dan Burrish, but then you go look at the actual paper trail that's there,
Yeah.
and it's a lot. There's a lot on this guy.
Well, Brian Jackson has walked me back from the ledge many times. We're like the odd couple. He's
It's
very
great.
straight laced, and I write him, bro, bro, this, and no, you're crazy, and Brian has just been awesome, and he is gonna, whatever I didn't share, Brian Jackson is going to break this S4, S2 alpha story wide open further than I did, and I just cannot wait till he comes forward with that. Him and I are going to be at a UFO conference in San Francisco area in April, and people are going to be like, "Oh, Dan Burrish is correct." When a guy talks about microbiology with terms I have to Google for 4 hours, something's going on. I don't know what, something's going on. And they definitely tried to Bob Lazar him.
Xander, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, if you don't mind. There was so we've established so far, Victor is not Stan Deo. He's a chap called Stanton John Willett. Is that correct, right?
And we're not totally sure of the 2 T's or the 1 T. My military source said 1 T. Jeff Broadstreet did say, okay, if it's 1 T, it's 1 T. If I wrote 2 T's, I wrote 2 T's. But it's Stanton John Willett.
Okay. To go on from there, that same source of yours has checked the logs from the time period and has confirmed there's a name there that matches.
Correct.
Fully, that's cool. We can't display that he's your confidential source. Fine. Everyone's got to have one. The first thing I did when I learnt about this, and I'll get into a bit more of when I learnt about this. I learnt about this basically an hour before we went live today. I was sent this stuff ahead of time just so I could share it on screen. So the first thing I did was Google the name, and I'm sure you did as well. And I think you said earlier in the interview today that it's not the person that I think I found.
Right, with the gray beard.
Yep. Yeah, and it's an
And I sent
obituary,
this to Jeff
and he
Broadstreet. So
died in October last year.
right, and
Right.
highly educated too.
And not only
Not
that, he also worked for companies that are for a company that is a high-end military contractor. But
I know.
I'm really sad that it's not him. But at this point, I know, like, I'm the same as
Well,
you. We need a
I will
good
tell you.
investigator.
I will tell you exactly what Jeff Broadstreet said. I
Right.
have his email.
Okay.
He goes, he looks real old there, and it doesn't look like the Victor I met, but his name is wrong. And when, God damn it, liars don't talk like that. A liar will say, yeah, it could have been jumbled. Yeah, the military could have mixed it up. No, Jeff Broadstreet said, hey, the name is wrong. His name is Stanton John Willett.
Okay. So let's say, okay, it's not him at this point. Yes, I agree with you. We need someone with a bit more experience to help us research this. UAP GURP. I'm just shouting out that guy.
Yes, I'm asking for help. Did Dr. Greer ask for help? No.
The last point I need to make before we really start talking about what all of this means is, like, I posted the your press release on Reddit yesterday, literally as soon as you sent it to us. And you know, it's Reddit. It's the fight, you know. The reception was, you know, lukewarm to say the least. I wanted to read, if you don't mind, I wanted to read a response of somebody on Reddit who was incredibly, you know, very polite, but was very skeptical about the claims that you made in the press release. And he's here watching. I know he's watching right now because he's just commented. He says, the information is very interesting and forward momentum on ufology. If you're vested in particular into the alien interview story, it's not going to break down any walls of disclosure. But he knows, he can sense you're incredibly passionate about this, and that's obvious.
Passionate to be done with it, to be honest with you. And I don't care if it's real or not. And that, I'm not interrupting you, but that really pisses people off. And that separates me from every single ufologist in the world. I don't care if it's real or not. I simply try to find the truth. But go ahead.
So, yeah, he said the broader audience will not understand how big of a deal this actually will be. If it can be confirmed, if we can find this guy, as I said earlier, it confirms so much. It makes you a part of history, in my opinion, because it ties so much together. Not only does it confirm your source that has access to the logs, it confirms the fact that Bob Lazar is in the logs. It confirms that this Victor, the real Victor, is in the logs and was there. And it also confirms that he gave the producers of the documentary that VHS 100%. So that is hard evidence, in my opinion. We definitely need some people to try and search this name and find out some information. Either way, he said, no judgments from me. Thank you for sharing. He's still watching right now, apparently. And he doesn't feel duped, which I think is important, because it's really easy at the moment for people to feel like they're being made a fool of when they're told, you know, salacious, you know, this is what's going to happen, and there's always an under-delivery.
Which I haven't done.
I
keep telling
agree
people
with
I
you.
don't know. Yeah, okay, thank you. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. Folks, I still don't know. You know, until I have that alien in formaldehyde or an alien puppet, I'll never know. Don't you appreciate that? Isn't this what you want out of a UFO whistleblower or investigator? Not some pompous asshole that tells you what he knows for sure, but some guy that's humble. I might not talk humble, but I am. That comes to the internet community, compliments the internet community, asks the internet community to help me, and to tell the internet community we'll never know for sure. But to put the mosaic of all this evidence together, it is the only thing that you can say is that a bunch of 70-something-year-old geriatric people hoaxed a used car dealer in Chicago? Really? Okay.
And to finish, ultimately, the Redditor is literally thankful for the conversation. So I think that's a win.
I,
So this
on
is,
Reddit, yes.
I'm
I
sure
mean,
there'll be some people that
Reddit almost
disagree.
make me cry in the corner. They're so vicious.
I'm
But,
sure plenty of people will disagree, but yeah, look, tomorrow is going to be the same as it was today. Like
Yep.
the world is not going to change, but this is a great step forward in my opinion. This video is extremely famous, so now we have a name that 100% we know is the name, and we've waited a long time for that. So Clint, I'm done. Sorry, carry on. I just, I needed to get that out because I've been at the mercy of Reddit for like the last 24 hours. And it's
yeah,
it was
I
a long
know.
night. Yeah,
I know. You were upset yesterday about the Reddit thing. We were talking about Reddit. John and I have talked about Reddit a lot, and it's, gosh, man, it's like, well, so as I mentioned to Xander last night, this is an old story. It's been around for a long time, since I think it was in 2013. This is just for people who spend any amount of time on Reddit, right? If you get disenchanted or disenfranchised, or you feel like the Reddit community is just toxic and poisonous, which it is to some extent. In 2013, there was a Reddit report that was released, and it was the most Reddit addicted cities. It was like all of the places in the world who spent the most time on Reddit. And one of the most Reddit addicted city, actually the most Reddit addicted city in America, is Eglin Air Force Base.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. In fact, if you look up Eglin Air Force Base in quotes and Reddit, if you go on like DuckDuckGo and do a search there, Google will filter this out, but on DuckDuckGo, you'll find there's a Reddit post about this, and then I sent it to Xander. Maybe if Xander, you pull it up, there's a archive website that archives this article, and it shows that Eglin Air Force Base is actually the most Reddit addicted city because that's where they're running the disinfo, misinfo campaign out of. It's where all the astroturfing comes from. It's where all these guys are. As a matter of fact, it's probably expanded way beyond what it used to be. But we're talking about 2013, so we're going on, 12 years ago. Yeah. You just can't, Reddit is a resource. It's a place to go to like find information. But when you start to get into these conversations with people, and they get so hateful and hurtful and weird, we're all after the same thing, right? I mean, I think we just want to know what's going on. It's weird how they turn the community against each other, don't you think?
Well, I do. I was a bad guy pro wrestler on and off for 20 years. I was a used car dealer for 30 years, and I ran for political office, governor in United States Congress. I have never gotten my feelings hurt more than looking at some Reddit post about me. It's unbelievable. I mean, you talk about. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's why I just.
Well, what keeps you coming back with, like, why keep putting yourself out there and taking all this heat from people? I mean, it just, you don't have to do this.
I've been maligned my entire life. I was all conference, all area, all city, all state monitor mention in football. There's still people in Chicago saying I wasn't a good football player. I was in a main event match my second day in the wrestling business with Jerry Lawler. Still people saying, "Oh, Johnny Stewart wasn't a good." It's just there is something about me that people don't like. I have to accept that, and there's something about me that triggers people to like challenge me or to try and destroy me or to tear me down. I get that. I don't know. I'm sure it's my personality. I understand that, and people don't want the truth. It was the worst day in Jack the Ripper history when we kind of identified who Jack the Ripper was. It ends the industry, and I think people don't want the end to the board game to happen. They want the hunt, the mystery to go on. And this freaking car dealer is going to prove or try and prove the validity of an alien on tape. Oh, I'm going to destroy this guy. I think I think I've summed it up properly. But they're awful people on Reddit. Sorry.
it's easy to be awful from behind a keyboard on the internet, and people take every opportunity to be shitty to each other. It's a shame. And as you know, it's like as the topic becomes more mainstream, which it certainly has over the last 5-6 years. I mean, it's gone almost fully mainstream, I think you could say now. As a matter of fact, if you are saying you don't believe in it now, you really have to explain that, because I think the burden of proof is on the other side now. But yeah, it just seems like the activity on Reddit, there's some organized attempt to just drive a wedge between people. They want to find ways to just stir up arguments and get people fighting over things. And it just almost like by poisoning the well, it turns off people to the whole idea.
I talked to a colonel. I'm sorry, that's not true. I spoke with Donald Schmidt, famous Roswell guy, who talked to a colonel, and the colonel said, you know, we don't have to do anything to the UFO community. They destroy themselves. So if you want to be continually laughed at by men and women in Alexandria, Virginia, in the DC Beltway, in Quantico, keep doing what you're doing, skeptics and trolls, because you're doing the government's job. Instead of destroying somebody like me, who says, I don't know, will you help me? But look at all this bizarre evidence. Instead of raising your eyebrow, instead of putting me down that I'm fat and that I have crazy eyes, how about saying, well, let me look at his evidence, because he doesn't say for sure of what he knows about this film. And I don't think we'll ever get through.
That's what's so refreshing about you, man. And I think that's one of the things that if people aren't familiar with you don't understand is like, you're not coming out here saying, I've solved it all. I've figured it all out. I have all the answers. That's not what you're doing. And you're not even saying, and we hear a lot of hype in this space, and it's like, I know the secret, but I can't tell you. But I can tell you a little bit. And it's like, you've never done, it's not what you're doing. You come out and you're talking about the Lockheed firefight, and I'm like, that's crazy. There's no way this is real. It feels too weird. There's no way. And then a year later, here comes Jake Barber, Lockheed firefight. Yeah, I heard that. That's probably legit. And everyone's like, oh my God, you were a year ahead of that story. It's just, you've never, in all the times that we've talked in our many conversations since we met, you have always been very clear and very upfront about what you know, what you don't know, and where you're at in your process.
Yeah.
Very transparent.
Yeah, when I said at the end of the documentary, this is such a funny story. I said at the end of my documentary, Alien Interview, Case Closed, I said, I'll never know for sure if it's real. I'm 75 to 85% that I think it's real because of the coding that no one could have known what that was back in 96. But I think there's a 15% chance that it might be a PSYOP film by the government. Clint, the cameraman, Darius, who was running the 3-camera shoot, went like this. Like, wait a minute. This guy's not saying for sure that this is real? And, he was like very complimentary after the documentary shoot. Like, I really respect you.
Well, you've made a great point about that too. Even if they faked it, well, then why did they fake it? That's a story. That's important to know. Why is the government spending all this money faking these videos? What's that about? Right, so it's either real and that's the story, or it's fake and that's the story, but there's no way it's not significant.
Right, exactly. If you're faking, you're spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars that can go to lunch programs, after school programs, bridges and roads. And I'm not being Mr. Congressman, but I'm right. Our crumbling cities, it could go for that, but it's not. We're faking videos. So a used car dealer 30 years from now could make the internet crazy. Come on. That story's worse than them not telling us that aliens are real. And Dr. Greer warned me about this years ago.
We've heard it before. We've heard the alien interview story. The John Lear was the first guy I remember, and he was talking to George Knapp about this. This was back in the 80s. He was like, John Lear, how he talks, he's like, there's going to be an alien interview. I understand. I have it on good authority. My sources tell me it's a videotape. We're going to see this, And then it's like he says it, Danny Sheehan talks about. I mean, this is something that's been boiling around, under the surface, sort of bubbling under the surface for so long. And I think, do you think? Let me ask you this: do you think where we're at now, like, what do you think about the current pace of the conversation? Like, we've gone on to like psionics, and there's eggs, and we're bringing them in, and Jake Barber's got a Silicon Valley billionaire who's gonna help him capture a UFO. What's your take on all this? How far we've come in the last just 5-6 years?
I like giving analogies because I'm stupid and an idiot. So anybody else that's probably more intelligent than me can understand, better with an analogy. Right now, um, uh, there is a corporation, a new CEO has taken over. We look in the window, a crooked corporation, and we look in the window and they're going through the books right now. That's the stage that we're at. And they're not leaving until they find something. And we, the government or the crooked employees know that we've stolen millions of dollars and we're going to be found out. So what can we do? Can we make the blow easier on ourselves? Can we soften the blow? Can we come forward? As Richard Nixon once said, give the hors d'oeuvre so they don't come back for the main course. And that is what I think you are seeing. That there's obviously a group inside of Washington, D.C., a military group, wants some sort of disclosure. They realize that the jig is up. They're going to be found. Congress is on their heels. It's just a matter of time. And then you have Donald Trump in the White House. That is a wild card. So, yes, they're going to give us an hors d'oeuvre. Hopefully, we don't come back for the main course. I don't want to know how the technology works. I want to know how the nuclear bomb works. I just want to know that you have the bomb. That's all. And then we'll go back to watching Wheel of Fortune and NFL football, and Jon Stewart will go away and not bother anybody anymore, and life will go on. I truly believe that we will see some sort of disclosure that is palatable, that is relatable, understandable, and that is acceptable to the American people. Is it going to be a video of a craft with a being coming out of it? Possibly, possibly. Are they going to roll a dead being out in formaldehyde? I don't think so. But have been saying this for 4 years. We have to do the same that they did in South Africa with Nelson Mandela. You have got to tell these, Flint, listen to me on this one. You have got to tell these CEOs, these project managers, and those that were in the military that were part of these programs, you're exempt from any illegal activity. Possible murder, possible money laundering, possible obfuscation, malfeasance, misappropriation of funds. You are exempt, but tell us what you know. Then you're going to have people talking. And that has just got to be a law enacted in Congress, an exemption law against all of these people in the programs, from CEOs to the janitor.
Is that a fair deal? Would you take that deal? If you could have disclosure tomorrow, but everybody gets to walk?
Absolutely, because they're going to come for me eventually, and I'm a retired general, and I'm going to lose my country club membership, and my daughter's going to, William and Mary College, and I got to pay for tuition, and the wife wants a new Lexus. What? Wait, what? You're going to release me from all indemnity? Okay, yeah, we've had creatures at Right Path for 70 years. So
That's true.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
throw them a bone. That's what it's about right now.
It's all about the money, Clint. It's all about the money. It's all about their lifestyle. The CEO is not going to let you take him to jail and take away his $150 million golden parachute. You have to exempt these people. As hard as that is, and as that tough as that's going to be, you have to have a blanket exemption, and then they'll start talking. Because there ain't no general, and I'm speaking in bad English, that's going to let you take his country club membership away and his wife's Lexus. It's not happening.
I heard Kelly Chase recently say, and she's somebody I follow. She was the founder and host of the UFO Rabbit Hole podcast, and her new podcast, Cosmosis. Congratulations, Kelly, just launched. She's also written and directed a couple of documentaries and a docuseries on Amazon called Cosmosis. But she said the other day that we're like 8 years into a 20-year process of disclosure. This is a 20-year-long process. We're 8 years deep. So we're almost at the halfway point. And I've heard that from different people. I've heard, I think it was, who was it? I want to say it was Jim Semivan, but it wasn't. It was John Ramirez. He said 5 years from 2018, somewhere around there, he expected something big to happen. We've been hearing this for a while now, that something's going to happen. Do you think, barring disclosure and some kind of deal that gives these people immunity, what about the NHI? Do you think that they make a move first?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is what my DARPA scientist warned me of, that they're making, he said, quote, they're making weaponry for a defensive purpose for a possible invasion. So the government is worried that they are not in control and that these NHI beings are going to do something on their own. So what a better way than to have an invasion and shoot some down and scare the world, create a one world government. It, it's falling into their plans almost.
Gosh, I would have said maybe 15, 10, maybe even 10 years ago, I would have said that's crazy. 5 years ago, I would have said that's super unlikely. It just doesn't make any kind of sense. But now I'm kind of like, given the way things are going, and if you look at the news for even 5 minutes a day and you just look at it and go, wow, it would really take something that big. It would take an alien invasion to really like get us to that one world government stage. We're kind of creeping up on it. It seems like, everything's digital. All our transactions are more or less digital. We're going to come to a point where it's like, I just wonder if that's really the goal, is to just like a blue beam kind of a scenario where they just freak everybody out, do some huge display. Your DARPA scientist sounds like the biggest story ever. Have you, like, what else has he said?
Careful, Clint, you're complimenting me. No, that's what he said. He said they don't care about us, the NHI. They don't care about us. They're not going to let us blow up the planet. Quote, and he would not back down. I sent a secondary email to him. By the way, I sent this to Ross Coulthard also.
Yeah. What's Ross say?
Ross thinks it's crazy. But then based on the drone phenomenon and knowing about DARPA, Ross is like, he was doing dishes at the time. Ross is like, I don't think it's that crazy anymore. But he said they're coming back for their craft, the bodies, and resources. And they don't care either way about us. And I'm also saying that, is this return going to be used in conjunction with the implosion of the global economy? Folks, we are at $38 trillion of debt in America. When it hits 42, it's over. America is officially bankrupt. We will not be able to pay the interest payment on our debt. It's over. In my opinion, this is going to be a useful ploy, a useful thing that's happening that implode the entire system because the big bad aliens are returning. I feel this. Dr. Greer feels this. Many other people feel this. Again, follow the money. I followed the money in the Victor story. It led me to success. I'm following the money in the alien phenomenon. And again, I know he takes a lot of shit, but Dr. Greer's right. It's not that we covered up that we have aliens, is that we maybe have done illegal things to garner the money to fund these programs, that we maybe, allegedly murdered people, that maybe we've created a hybrid, that maybe we're covering up that they might be demonic, allegedly. I'm just saying that Greer's supposition is that the after story, it's not about the aliens, it's all of the other story that is in line like a train and a caboose that is just the American people will never accept. It will blow their minds. That's what the fear is. We're way beyond. We've got beans that right pat. Anybody in America gives a shit about that anymore? They don't.
I just think a lot of the average person right now is just so spread so thin. The average person is just stressed out, spread as thin as they've ever been, trying to make ends meet, get by, figure out, what the fuck is the economy going to do in the next 6 months? Like,
Right.
just trying to survive right now as a full-time, it's an 80-hour-a-week job. It takes 24 hours a day to just keep it in your head. The idea of aliens being out there, I think people are like, okay, like, how does that change things? If it changes things for me, then okay. But I just feel like a lot of people aren't there yet. What do you think changes if contact does happen? I mean, what changes for the average person?
Yeah, I give a story that people are like, oh, I didn't expect that. First of all, the wife of the alien chaser, she's like, this is great. You found Victor. You spent so much of our money.
Now, please stop.
Okay, right. But she's like, what do you want me to do? Okay, there's aliens are real. What do you want me to do?
Yeah.
I still got to go run our hotel. I've still got to, take care of our daughters in college. We've got grandkids. What do you do? Good point. So I think, yeah, we're going to have to somehow turn these oil companies' profitability into other sources of energy. What people don't understand, turning to free energy that has been mentioned for the entire world is going to take 50 years. Well, the oil industry, please calm the fuck down. It's not going anywhere. It's going to take 50 years.
And they've already done fine. They've made all the money.
Trillions. Exactly.
Trillions.
So,
Like, how much more do you need, really?
can we have advancement in medicine that will extend our lives a little? Do you want people living to be 120? I don't know. I don't think you want that as a sustainable planet. Can we find ways to release the burden of our everyday life? Can we have a little bit more knowledge? I think the reality that extraterrestrials are real only strengthens the stories in the Bible, in the Quran, and Muslim theology. Every religion, every culture has something coming down from the skies, helping us, educating us, making us feel better about ourselves in life. And I think proving that extraterrestrials are real only strengthens that. This is going to strengthen Catholicism. This is going to strengthen Hinduism. This is going to strengthen the Muslim and Arabic world. And I think that's a good thing. I don't think this is going to be a bad thing unless the government, wants to pull out their weaponry and have an altercation. That does scare me.
Do you remember, you got to remember that you listened to Coast, right? You were, Coast to Coast. Remember that caller, the Area 51 caller episode?
Art, you don't understand, Art. They're triangulating me now. You don't understand what's going on.
I don't have much time. But and then they get cut off in the middle of the call and they come back and Art Bell's like, we're on a standby system. We're on a standby. They cut off our lines.
Right.
Reminds me, your DARPA guy reminds me of this.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, it's coming. He said, and this isn't something that I was told, so it could be misinformation. I overheard this. I saw the weaponry being developed. It could only, when you're developing weaponry that has to go hundreds, if not thousands of miles in the atmosphere and into the ionosphere and into the, into outer space, it's kind of easy to surmise this isn't for a battlefield condition in, the Republic of Georgia or to fight Russia. It's for some kind of outer space interplanetary perceived threat. And I found that interesting, again, that he wasn't telling me, oh, I was told. He was doing what did they just say? Reading the memos, hearing the talk, hearing the conferences, and seeing the weaponry being developed for some sort of interplanetary invasion. And one more time, he would not back down to the vernacular and verbiage of invasion, which shocked me.
The clues, man, they're out there. You got Lou Elizondo calls his book imminent. You've got John Lear saying there's some huge thing coming. John Ramirez saying there's some huge thing coming. Everybody's saying there's some. Ross Coulthard said Coulthard said, I believe, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, I believe there's a ticking clock attached to disclosure. Carl Nell, same thing. At his Soul Foundation symposium presentation, he showed that slide. Remember that slide got leaked, and they were like, by 2035, it's got to all be out. It's got to all be out by 2035. And he had it broken down into phases. Phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're like in phase 1.5 or wherever we are right now. I don't know. I have to go back and look at the slide.
Do you remember what Victor said in '08? He said, Jeff Broadstreet asked him, so you're talking about the end of the world. Victor said, don't plan a 20th anniversary of this documentary. They shot that in 2007. 20 years is 2027. And now you have a DARPA scientist says they're coming back in 27. And Victor said the end of the world isn't coming at aliens. The end of the world is coming as the deluge of the solar, the deluge of a solar eruption, a solar X-class flare. Victor said is going to end the world. And I am simply saying, don't believe me, folks. I'm just telling you what someone said. I'm simply saying, are NHI coming back because they know that this solar flare is going to do massive extinction level event to the earth, and they're coming back to get their stuff and hightail it back to wherever they live. Is that plausible? It might be. And I interviewed the wife of another telepath at S4. I know people rolling their eyes. I interviewed her for 4 hours in Rockford, Illinois. Forget about what her husband said. He said the same damn thing that Victor said. The sun. She said, John, he was obsessed with the sun, and the sun, bathing the earth with solar rays. Who's the guy that's obsessed with the sun? That was in the reverse propulsion program. My other Victor, Stan Dale. It's all over his website. The sun's coming. The sun's coming. What the F is going on in these programs where the people inside these reverse propulsion, reverse engineering, retention programs are being told something is going to happen with the sun and our planet? You can't ignore it. I'm sorry.
You can't. And Dan Burrish, I know this because I just rewatched this interview, and it's going to go. We re-uploaded it to the channel. It'll go up tomorrow at 2. In his interview, one of his many interviews, but in one particular interview that's going to go up on our channel tomorrow, he talked about solar flares. They interviewed. This is back in like 1993, I think, when this interview was done. And he's saying, yeah, there's something to do with the region of space that our planet is going to pass through, and there's some type of a cloud that could increase the amount of solar radiation that makes its way to Earth. It's this whole explanation they get into. And they were looking at this using, what do they call it? The looking glass technology. They have this looking glass thing where they can see probable futures. And they were able to sort of determine that was one probable outcome of the near term, was that there's going to be some kind of huge solar flare event. It's crazy how many times these threads keep coming back up. I just think that's the weirdest thing of all.
Birdie as well, who's on Wednesday with us. She, in her, when she was doing the sort of drone visions that we interviewed her about, but hopefully, it was our Christmas special, so we were a bit all over the shop, but on Wednesday we'll probably get much more into it. But she also remote viewed some sort of, she alluded to some sort of solar activity, so maybe it's a question for Birdie as well on Wednesday.
And Bob Bigelow, you can go to New Thinking Aloud, Jeffrey Mishlov's channel on YouTube, New Thinking Aloud. Look for the Bob Bigelow interview, Robert Bigelow. And in that interview, he talks to Jeff Mishlove about hiring a team of remote viewers to look forward 10 years. They wanted to look at medical technology 10 years out and see where it was going to be. And his team of remote viewers couldn't see past a certain event. They said there's an event that's in the near future that is so big, so massive that we can't go past it, and we're not sure what that is. But Bigelow, and you can listen to him say it. I've got the clip somewhere, but go watch this interview because it's really weird. It's astonishing what he says. He says that based on his team's research, they are not confident about the near-term prognosis for mankind, for humankind. They think it's going to be really ugly. And he was asked about this. Mishlove goes, well, what do you mean? Like, what can you say? And he's like, well, how do you tell somebody that they have a terminal disease? Like, how do you tell somebody really bad news? No one would, they don't want to listen to you. No one wants to hear it. And even if you told them that, what are they going to do with that information? So that's coming from Bob Bigelow. That's coming from, 3 or 4 other sources over the years that have brought it up. Even Daz Smith. We had Daz Smith on, remote viewer Daz Smith, and he even said there was a something that was in the near-term future that they couldn't penetrate So it was almost like a wall. Couldn't figure out what it was. Really, really weird.
Yeah. You know, Dan Smith and his group said my interview's real, right? You know that.
The future forecasting group, guys?
Future Fast Forecasting Group saw a tan being in distress behind a partition in a no man's land, and Groom Lake is a nuclear fallout no man's land. They said that it was a controlled crash in a wooded area, that the subject matter that they were looking at was in distress and was sick and felt that he was being, held against his will. They saw people in uniforms and the partition. They kept, the glass between the being and the interviewee. So yeah, Dan Smith is like this thing. And Richard Dolan said it right on camera. John, I doubted it. I don't doubt it anymore. I think that
Yeah.
video is real. But I wanted to say something. Somebody said something to me when I was running for Congress in '99, when all the dumb bases were allegedly being said to be built underground. And he said the strangest thing. He's like, it's almost like the government is spending money like there's no tomorrow. And he said, maybe because they know there isn't one. It really, I don't know, that just struck me like, yeah, that makes sense. How could grown men and women not care about being, $38 trillion in debt? There's got to be another reason.
Because it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Exactly. Doesn't matter.
Wow. What a drag. What a downer, man. I thought we were going to end on a high note. This is John, you're harshing my mellow, man. Oh my gosh. John, we've gone half hour over. I feel like we've covered so much. You're always so fun to talk to, and you bring a good vibe, a good energy to the chat, man. And it's just great to have you. Is there anything that we haven't got into that you want to say, or anything you want to tell the people before we wrap it for today?
Yeah, I just want to say my mea culpa, my plea. Folks, the internet has been awesome to me. I never would have been able to do this if it wasn't for strangers who became my friends on the internet. They helped me with the money. They helped me with look up this, find this, check this. I think you're on the wrong path here. The two guys that proved the Linda Moulton Howe Special Operations Manual for the recovery of extraterrestrial craft and bodies, the OPNEC BBS facility in 1950s. The internet figured that out for me. Bermuda Biological Station, OPNAC, Oceanic Platform for North Atlantic and the Caribbean. They proved that little code that no one knew, where to take live beings in Linda Moulton Howe's manual. Two strangers broke, I think, a bigger story than my alien story.
Oh, the SOP, what was it?
SOM manual.
SOM 120, what was it? 151 or what? Something?
Right. And people were saying,
Special Operations Manual.
Why would they put in the facility to take living beings and give it this strange an acronym abbreviation? And in 70 years, no one figured it out until I started talking about it. And two strangers, one a nice young college kid in University of in Florida, in a university, with another guy named Adriano Andriano. These two figured it out. Bermuda Biological Station, the Oceanic Platform for North Atlantic and the Caribbean. It was an offshore platform built in the 50s. That's where they took the beans. We finally figured it out, proving that Linda Moulton Howe manual has got to be authentic for that bizarre facility that no one could figure out for 70 years until Two Angels did. I'm simply saying, go ahead.
Linda's the OG, man. She's the OG for sure.
She's my muse. She's been my muse for 4 years. I'm just asking the internet, take me home, please. I'm Rudy Rudiger of the UFO world. Let me get in one play. Let me sack the quarterback. I'm asking the internet community, help take me home with this investigation. Find me Stanton, John Willett, Rancho Cucamonga, California, Phoenix, Arizona. Help me find this guy. Let's bring closure to this, and I can go home and walk away in peace and I have fun with my wife for the next 20, 30 years. And I thank everyone on the internet. I love all of you that helped me. I even like the people that were harsh to me. You strengthened me into made my sword, the steel, that much more stronger. And I'm asking the internet, Help me one last time. Help me bring this story home.
You can't make a diamond without pressure, John. And you're under a lot of pressure, but you've come through. You've come through every time. John, thank you so much for being with us today. This was awesome. It's great to catch up with you. We'll do it again soon. I want to learn more about this DARPA whistleblower.
Yep.
This is going to be the next thing.
Thank you, Clint. Thank you, Xander. Thank you to all of your viewers and listeners. God bless each and every one of you. Have a great summer.
All right, John. Thanks. And we're going to go ahead and wrap it up there, guys. It's been a hell of a show. We went a little bit long today, but I think it was worth it. Thank you all for being there and being a part of this. Thank you for all the super chats. You guys are phenomenal. Thank you for the support. Thank you to Jay Pena, who dropped a super chat even before the show started. Thank you. Also, quick update. We're sitting at 22,780 subscribers. That's 1,110 in just the last 28 days. We are going strong onward to 100K. Thank you, everybody who has become a subscriber. Thank you to everyone who's become a member. Thank you to everybody who has shared a video, liked a video, left a comment. Please continue to do so. Keep the community alive. Go to our Discord, join the Discord, become a part of that conversation. We've got a remote viewing group. We've got book clubs. We've got all kinds of stuff going on. We're going to have new things going. We're going to be updating it with some new fun projects that we're kicking around internally. It's going to be great to see you there. So we'll be back next week. Until then, I don't know. Go outside, look up, bring your iPhone, see if you can reach out and get in contact with some orbs. Xander, is there anything else you want to add before we call it a day?
Nothing from me. No. I thought it was excellent to hear from John in depth. I really do think, see, the problem isn't fixed with my mic. Anyway.
You've got 13 XLR cables, every color of the rainbow.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I will see, I'm sure I'll see plenty of people at the webinar on Sunday. I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Yep. Excellent.
Okay, gang. Go to Ubiquity University. Don't forget to sign up for the Psionics webinar. That's going to be this Sunday, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 11 p.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Go to ubiquityuniversity.org/psionics-seminar. You'll see the link on their page. Go there, sign up. It's free, and you can hear the best lineup. Everybody in ufology that you want to hear from is going to be speaking, and this is your chance to get an introduction to psionics, what it's all about, what it means for our community, and what it means for the future of contact. Important stuff. Okay, gang, we'll leave it there. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Until then, keep looking up.
Now, quest around a bit. Ask yourself this. For what reason would a person be considered hopelessly insane? What sort of claims must a person simply not make? Well, there is one, and that is if anybody claims that he is God. That simply isn't done. But you see, the trouble about deep secrets is they can't be repressed indefinitely. There are certain processes, some of which are what you might call spiritual exercises. Others are simply chemicals. Others are just horse sense, whereby one comes to see very clearly indeed that black goes with white and self goes with other. And as this becomes clear to you, it's rather shaking.
U.S. government has on the subject matter is not respected by the non-human intelligent spirits. The skies are not classified and your conscious cannot be redacted. Ultimately, why I feel safe and why I feel optimistic about the future is I know the NHI is guiding us that way.
And that is the secret. There really is no other secret than that. But it is thoroughly repressed.